Namaskar everybody and welcome to the Gita Satsang for today. So let us start with Prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Gita Satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let us chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnaya Vasudevaya Haraye Paramatmane Pranatah Kleshanashaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Namostu Te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindaya Tapatra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Ramanujadaya Patram Jnana Vairagyabhushanam Srimadvenkatanathaaryam Vande Vedanta Deshikam Yo Nityamachyutapadambuja Yukma Rukma Vyamohatastaditarani Trinaya Mene Asmadguror Bhagavatosya Dayaika Sindho Ramanujasya Charanam Sharanam Prapadye. So with prayers at the lotus feet of Pada Acharyas, let us start with our topic for today. So we had stopped with the 31st shloka in the last satsang. So today we will take from shloka 32 onwards. So in the 4th chapter, the 32nd shloka, Krishna tells Arjuna, Evam bahubhida yajna vidata brahmano mukhe karmajan vidhitan sarvan evam nyatva vimokshase. Bahuvida yajna, these different kinds of yajna, sacrifice, have been described in the Vedas. O Arjuna, you understand that these different yajnas are originating from different types of karma, different types of work, different types of action. And if you understand this, it cuts the knots of material bondage. Somebody is liberated from this world and its bondage. So, we have seen in all the past few shlokas how Krishna told Arjuna about the different kinds of karma which can be done as part of Karma Yoga. So, different forms of yajna can be done. And what is the purpose of all this? That by doing all this, one will attain Atma Sakshatkara. Now, all these karma methods are coming from where? They are out of the Nitya and Naimittika karmas which are prescribed by the Shastras. Doing puja, doing tirtha yatra, offering dana to people, right? All these different kinds of activities which came under the, or doing actual homa yajna with dravya materials. Like this, there are different kinds of karma yoga methods. Now, somebody who understands this and does those karmas properly. So, there are two parts here which Krishna is stressing on. That there is one part which is the actual action part, the karma, and then there is understanding why one is doing it and doing it properly. So, that understanding part is the jnana part within the karma yoga. So, when somebody does their actions in this manner with both these aspects together, then they are eligible to get moksha. Now, here the Vyakyatas give the example like you have a river. Now, the river originates at some point. Like suppose you say the mighty Ganga river. So, Ganga originates at this point called Gangotri, which is at some small tiny point in the Himalayan mountains. So, if you look at the origin, the point from where this water is emanating out, it looks very small. That source is very small. But as the river flows, she becomes very wide and broad and a big river. And finally, this river merges with the ocean. So also, if you say that the event of Atma Sakshatkara is like the river joining the sea, right? This individual Atma understood what is the true nature of the self, of the Atma and the Paramatma. So if you liken that to the river joining the sea, then what was the part which is the broad flow of the river which came before Atma Sakshatkara? Those are the different methods of yajna that can be used. And what is the source? It is the tiny, every small action that you perform as part of your Nitya Karma, as part of your Naimittika Karma. That source is very tiny. So it may seem to us like it is just one action, lighting the lamp, reciting stotras, doing some dana, offering charity to others, right? Reading from the scriptures every day, visiting a holy place. By themselves, each of these is small and tiny actions, but they are like the tiny source of the river. As you keep on doing this regularly and consistently and with the right spirit, as you perform all of these karmas individually, they add up and they become these different methods of yajna. That is like the river being in full flow. And then finally, you attain Atma Sakshatkara as a result of all these yajnas that you have performed. So that is like the river joining to the sea. Now, here it is important to understand that only mechanical performance of the action is not what is being talked about here. Whatever you are doing, it has to percolate. The effect of that has to permeate into every aspect of your life. We've already said in many previous satsangs that we cannot have a situation where my adhyatmic sadhana, my spiritual practice is one part. Like when I'm doing puja, I'm a very pious person. When I'm reciting stotras, I'm a very focused and holy person. And at other times of the day, I'm a very evil person. That cannot happen, right? So here the example is given by the commentators that suppose you go to some person, okay, and you are asking, you want to run a school for orphan girls, or you want to set up a anath ashrama where you're going to take care of orphan girls, girl children, and so you want funds and you go and request somebody for donation. Let us say there's a person who gives you lots of money and he gives a lot of donation, fine, but this person is such that in his own house, his daughters-in-law, he's torturing them, he's troubling them, he's giving them physical torture or mental torture or any other way he's troubling them. Then whatever dana he does, how much ever charity he gives, right? He is doing the action, no doubt, but his action will not count as karma yoga because, in essence, he is not following what is the actual essence of what is taught in the Shastras. He is giving a donation, but it is a mere mechanical act of parting with some money and it has not percolated into his life. What is the need to be, what comes before doing dana? It is to be good to other people, right? So if you are not able to practice that first basic thing in your own house, you are troubling the women folk, and then you are giving donation to a girls school. What is the use of that? So your action will be just a karma, it will be mere action, it will not become karma yoga. So only now what Krishna is telling here, he's saying somebody who has this understanding that you do karma and you do it in the prescribed way and it becomes yajna. And if you do the karma with understanding, then that yajna, this understanding part will cut the knots of material bondage. Means such a person is not going to be bound in this cycle of birth and death if he understands the concept behind karma, what makes karma into karma yoga. Then such a person is capable of attaining moksha. He is eligible to attain moksha. So Krishna is telling that doing karma yoga is going to take one to the path of attaining moksha. Fine. Now in the next shloka, he tells another aspect. Now, so long he has described all these different forms of yajna. Now here he is going to talk about how one particular aspect is superior to the other, right? So in 33rd shloka, Krishna tells Arjuna, Shreyan Dravyamayad Yajna Jnana Yajna Parantapa Jnana Yajna Parantapa Sarvam Karmakhilam Partha Jnane Parisamapyate. So he's saying, go Parantapa. Parantapa is a word that in many places Krishna has used for Arjuna, the one who subdues his enemies. So, O Arjuna, the sacrifice which is performed in knowledge, jnana, that jnana yajna is superior to any dravya yajna, to any mechanical offering of materials into the sacrifice. After all, O Partha, all sacrifices of work culminate in knowledge. They result in knowledge. So here what Krishna is telling Arjuna is, whenever we perform any yajna, suppose somebody is doing puja, we said there are two parts to it. One is the action which is performed by using the dravya, by using the materials. And second aspect is the knowledge, the awareness that why am I doing this particular action? So here what Krishna is telling is that he has told so far that doing puja is yajna, offering worship is yajna, right? Going to Tirtha Yatra is yajna. Many things he has equated and told these are all yajna. Now he says that in that yajna what you are doing, one must pay attention to the awareness of one why we are doing that action. That knowledge is superior to just simply mechanically doing the action. So in Karma Yoga, there are two parts, action and knowledge. And in this, the knowledge part is superior. Now, why is Krishna explaining this? The acharyas give us this understanding that now when you have action and you have knowledge, the action is temporary. The activity that you perform, what work you do, is going to last only for a short time, isn't it? It will not go on and on forever. But that awareness with which you do the action, that will stay on forever in your mind. Like, for example, if I'm doing puja, I'm offering flowers in puja. Today, I have offered some flowers to the Lord. Tomorrow, when I look at it, will those flowers not have wilted? They will have drooped. They will have lost their freshness. If I put rangoli at the place where I'm doing puja, if I offer chandan to the Lord, all that, it will get smudged, it will be destroyed, it will go away, isn't it? If I made prasada and offer to the Lord today, tomorrow it will get spoiled because that's the very nature of these consumable materials. So the actions that we do, the materials which we are using, the dravya which we are using for performing those actions, those only last for short time. But if I offered a flower to the Lord with the bhava that, oh Lord, I'm offering this to decorate your vigraha because you look so beautiful, and I'm getting a lot of joy by looking at this beautiful form of yours, and I want to see you happy and looking beautiful. If I have that jnana, that awareness in my mind, then that feeling, that emotion that I have, that awareness, that jnana which I have, will never fade. That can always remain forever, isn't it? So that is why here Krishna is saying that between action and knowledge, it is the knowledge part which is superior to mere action. Okay. So now when we listen to this, what is it in essence for Arjuna? He is standing in the Kurukshetra Yuddha Bhumi. And what is it that he has to do? He has to fight. So in his context, if Krishna is telling him, do karma yoga, you fight in this war as part of your duty, right? So now he has an army, he has a chariot, he has Krishna as a charioteer, he has weapons, he has his Gandiva, he has many other weapons that he is going to use. Now, all these are the dravya, they are the materials which he is going to use. And whatever action he does, he picks up his bow, he strings the bow, he shoots the arrow, he kills somebody, all that is the karma part. It is the action. Okay. Now, what is the jnana part then? He is doing the karma part. What should be the awareness that he has at that time? He should have the awareness that I am a kshatriya, I am a raja. This yuddha is a dharma yuddha. It is a fight between the good and evil forces. In this yuddha, as a kshatriya, it is my duty to fight in a righteous manner. I have to fight for the side of dharma. I have to protect my people. That is my duty. That is what I have been born to do. And by doing this, through this participation in dharma yuddha, I will get moksha. I will get mukti. This awareness that he has is the jnana part. Okay. So is it enough for Arjuna to simply just do the karma part? Should he just go about randomly just killing people and all that? No, he should do that, but with the awareness of why he is doing it or why it is his dharma to do that. Right? So when Arjuna gets this awareness and with this jnana part, he does the action of fighting, then he will go towards Atma Sakshatkara. Okay. Now, if somebody has been listening very carefully at this point of time, here we are saying that Krishna is telling that knowledge is superior to action. So, jnana is superior to karma. That is what Krishna said in the shloka. So we will think, then why isn't it contradictory? In the beginning, what had Arjuna said? He said, I don't want to fight. I don't want to do karma. I will follow the path of Jnana Yoga. I will give up all this. I will control my senses. I will take sannyasa. I will sit in the forest. What he was proposing to do was the path of Jnana Yoga. And he said, I will not fight. Now Krishna told him, no, you must fight. Doing karma is superior. As a Kshatriya, it's your duty to fight. And he brought him to this stage. Now Krishna is saying that jnana is superior to karma. So, is it contradictory what Krishna is telling? Is it that first he said that you have to do karma and that is better than jnana, and now he is suddenly saying that jnana is better than karma? Has he changed his stand? Here the acharyas explain that we must pay a lot of attention and understand this, the subtle elements here, the sukshma tattvas here. Okay. So in the third chapter, Krishna told Arjuna, there was one shloka where he said, Niyatam kuru karmatvam. So he told Arjuna, do karma, because karma is which is familiar to you. You have all along been used to performing actions. Sitting quietly, controlling your senses, withdrawing your mind and senses from the world, and not doing any action is not for you, because that is not your swadharma. So doing karma is superior to jnana yoga. He had told him that. Now, in this fourth chapter itself, in some previous shloka, Krishna said to Arjuna that you should be able to see karma in jnana and jnana in karma. And being able to do that is superior. That means he is definitely saying that one must do karma, but with jnana attached along with it. Now, here in this shloka, Krishna appears to be saying that although you are doing jnana and karma, that jnana is superior to karma. So it is logical for somebody to think that, okay, why is Krishna saying different things at different time, right? But here, there is no confusion actually. Krishna is very clear that what he is telling. Definitely for Arjuna, fighting in the battlefield is his duty. So doing karma is definitely what Arjuna has to do. But that karma should not be blindly performed. That karma should not be done with lack of awareness. He should realize why he is doing that action and do the action accordingly. So he may have, his Gandiva may be the best bow in the world. He may have the best chariot. He may have all the best things in his control. But if he does not fight with awareness that why he is fighting, then that is just mere action that he is performing. And that will not take him towards Atma Sakshatkara. So Arjuna has to realize that I am doing XYZ actions, but he has to also realize why he is doing those actions. So then he is using the jnana part and doing karma yoga. So here again the commentators give an example. Like suppose there is a person who is having pain in the legs, an elderly man is having pain in his legs. Okay. Now he needs some massage to relieve that pain of his. Nowadays there are certain machines which are available, right? You have some roller like thing or some magnetic thing or something like that, and you can apply those on those painful areas, and that will give some relief from the pain. Now that is one option. The other option is that that man's son sits next to his father and lovingly, with gratitude for the father, with love for the father, starts massaging the father's legs. Okay. Now, there are two aspects here: the action of massaging the pain, the leg, the painful area, and the awareness that why I am doing this. The machine does not have the awareness. That machine is only going to do the action. What is the son going to do when he massages? He is doing it with the awareness. I am blessed to have a good father like this. My father is having pain. I want to relieve his pain. It is my duty as a son to take care of my father. So when he does that with that awareness, what do you think is going to give more joy to the father? He may have the best machine in the world to massage, and yet he will find more relief and more joy if his son actually sits there and presses his legs. Right? So, this is the example which the commentator has given to explain to us that how we should see this thing, that mere karma is not important. Karma, along with awareness, along with jnana, is what is desired. Okay. So whenever we do any rituals, there are so many rituals that are prescribed in the Shastras. We must make sure that we don't do these rituals just mechanically. We must do them with awareness. Why am I doing this? Why am I lighting the lamp? Why am I wearing tilak? Why am I adorning myself with kumkum? Why am I offering flowers to the Lord? Why am I in the wedding? Why are all these particular rituals done in the wedding? When we do all these activities with awareness, right, then we will have the correct path to go ahead. Now you must be aware, just the other day from yesterday, there's been all this, uproar which has been created by this finding that there has been adulteration of the ghee which is used in preparing this Tirupati Laddu. I'm sure you're aware of it. You must have heard all these discussions and debates and all that. So it's such a shocking thing to hear that when they tested those samples of the Laddu, Tirupati Laddu, they have found that there are all kinds of unwanted, unnecessary, and totally, condemnable things in that. They have found fish oil, they have found lard, they have found beef fat, and all such things in that laddu's components. So now let us think from the point of view of the people who were preparing the laddu, or people who are in charge of sourcing materials for that, right? Now, do you think they have prepared the laddu and they have offered it to the Lord and it has been given to the devotees? Now, do you think they did it properly with the jnana, or they only did the karma? This is an actual example for us to understand, isn't it? So they have performed the action. The materials have been sourced from somewhere. The laddu has been prepared. The laddu has been offered to the Lord, and that laddu has later been distributed to the devotees. What are all these things that have been done? They are all the karma. But has there been awareness? Has there been an understanding of what is the need for purity in that laddu? Has there been an awareness that we want to offer the best quality thing to the Lord? Has it been understood that what is the meaning of this prasada? How the Lord Chaitanya is invoked into that prasada and it is going to bless all these devotees? Has there been an awareness that we should only look at offering what is the best to the Lord and not at cutting down cost or saving money or making money for oneself, right? If that awareness had been there, do you think such a thing would have happened? Right? So the action has been performed. The prasadam has been prepared. It has been offered to the Lord. It has been distributed to devotees. But has it been karma yoga? Karma has been done, but there has been no jnana there at all, isn't it? So, like this, we must understand that now that is on a big scale. What about us in our house when we are offering something to the Lord? We also must be aware. Why am I doing this? What is this that I'm doing? What is this performance of all this puja, rituals, and all that? Unless we understand the essence of that, unless we understand why we are doing it, and try to do it in the best way possible for the pleasure of the Lord, without the feeling that I am the doer, without having any vested interest in that, then it becomes karma yoga, whatever we are doing, right? So we need to follow that. Okay. Now we come to, to the 34th shloka, which is very, very, very important in this chapter. So here, now it is as if Krishna has told all these things to Arjuna, right? And as I said, some things can appear confusing. So how is Arjuna going to get all this jnana? How is he going to get the right form of knowledge? How can he be sure that what he has learned is correct? Or how can he be sure that what he is thinking, what he is doing, all that is the right thing, right? So there is need for some guidance. And Krishna is telling Arjuna how he can get that guidance. So in the 34th shloka, Krishna tells Arjuna, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Learn the truth. What is this tattva? What are the truths that are important to learn? Learn them. How? By approaching a spiritual master. Somebody who is a jnani, someone who is a tattvadarshi, someone who has realized the truth, somebody who is master of all that spiritual knowledge. Approach such a spiritual master and learn the truth from him. And how to learn is also explained here. Inquire from him with reverence, with a lot of respect, and render service into him. Such an enlightened saint can impart knowledge to you because he has seen the truth. He knows what is the truth, and only such a person can give you the true jnana, right? So, if karma yoga has to be effective, we need jnana. How to get this jnana? We have to go and find a guru. We have to follow the instructions of the guru. Now, how do you do this? How do you get the jnana? How do you go to the guru? You go by three things, three aspects that Krishna has explained here. He says, Pranipatena, Pariprashnena, Sevaya. Pranipatena, offer obeisances, prostrate before the guru. What do we mean by prostrate before the guru? It means annihilate yourself, cut down your ego, remove your sense of superiority that I know. Go like an empty vessel. Go with the desire to learn. Go with the awareness that I know nothing and offer obeisance to the Lord. When we samanyavagi, when we generally do namaskara, right? If we are physically offering our obeisance to somebody, we are doing namaskara to somebody, we fall on the ground, right? And we touch our arms, our legs, and our head to the space in front of that person's feet. What does that indicate? It indicates that I'm completely surrendering to that person. It indicates, see, when you stand in front of somebody, it is as if you say, I am equal to you. But when you fall at somebody's feet, then you are indicating that I am surrendered to you. I am far, far, far inferior to you. I am bowing down to you. And that is the attitude with which one has to approach a guru. We have to offer namaskara, offer obeisance to the guru with this bhava that I know nothing and I am here to learn from the guru. Now, how do you learn? You offered obeisance, so you humbled yourself. The next thing is you need to ask questions. Now, the minute we say asking questions, our intellect, our mind come into the picture. Our mind has certain emotions. Our buddhi, our intellect gives certain questions, intellectual doubts. Now, here again, when we ask questions, we need to be asking questions in the correct way. We'll come to that a little later. And the third thing is by doing seva to the guru. Now, if you remember the Gurukula system of the older times, what used to happen? This brahmachari would go and stay with the guru. And it is not as if he's only sitting and listening to class by the teacher and at the rest of the times he's doing whatever he wants. No, he is rendering service to the guru. At all times, he's serving the guru. And in the process of serving the guru, he is also asking questions. He is getting knowledge from the guru, isn't it? That is the system that has been laid down. So, we need to do all these three things. We need to offer obeisance to the guru, we need to ask questions, and we need to render service to the guru. And then, when the guru is pleased by all these things that we do, then he will grant us knowledge. Only someone who does all these three things can please the guru, and the guru will grant knowledge to them. Now, here the example is given by the acharyas how Krishna used to do certain things in Vrindavan. So, when there's a calf which is newly born, that little calf does not know how to drink water from the Yamuna river, right? So, Krishna would lovingly lead that calf to the water and then he would stand in front of the calves. And what he would do is he would hold his hands, he would bind his hands behind his back, right? Then he would slowly bend forward and bend down so that he is leaning towards the river water. And then slowly with his tongue, he would lap up that water of the Yamuna. Why he was doing this? Because by looking at his action, the calves would imitate his actions. The calves cannot be taught how to drink water by pushing them into the water, isn't it? So he would stand near the water and do this. And watching him do that, the calves would know how they should also drink water from the Yamuna. So, like Krishna taught the calves to drink water by showing them the path, similarly, the Guru will teach us how to get jnana. He will give us that jnana, provided we approach him. Now, many times we say, isn't it, that you can take the horse to the water, but you cannot make it drink, right? So the guru is there to show us this is the water, this is what you have to drink. But then again, just because the guru is showing us and teaching us, whether we actually drink that jnana is up to us. How much propensity we have for doing whatever it takes to get that jnana, right? So, like this, we have to do. Now, when we ask questions, I said I will talk a little more about that. So, how should we ask questions? It is told when we are asking questions to the guru, it should be with humility. We should not stand in front of the guru, because when you stand up in front of the guru, it is like you are confronting the guru. It is as if you are challenging him. Okay, then is it okay to stand behind the guru and ask? No, we should not stand behind and ask either, because the guru cannot see who is asking the question. And the guru has to turn his back behind, and it will be a big strain for him to answer your question. Instead, stand by the side of the guru. Stand respectfully by the side of the guru and ask your questions with humility and seek answers to them. If you don't understand, then ask again. Ask on repeated occasions and ask with the bhava that you want your doubts to be clarified. Ask with the bhava that you are so, of inferior intelligence that you are not able to understand what the guru is telling the first time. You realize that it is your inadequacy which is making you unable to understand. Don't say the guru is not explaining in a proper way. Don't cast aspersions on the guru's ability to explain. Understand that it is my buddhi which is contaminated. This mind and buddhi of mine, these senses, are all contaminated with Rajatama. And that is why I am not able to catch the sattvic answer which the Guru is giving me. So realize that it is your inadequacy to understand and not the ability of the Guru which is in question. Okay? And sometimes you may feel that Guru is telling something, and Guru is telling something which you already know. You already know that concept, right? But if you continue, if you think that, oh, I already know this, why he is telling me this, then it means that you have become proud. Even if the guru is explaining something that you already know, then listen, because that listening is what will purify your antakarana. So that whatever guru is telling is required to purify you. So listen quietly, even if guru is telling something that you already know. Okay. So these should be the bhavas with which we reach to the guru. Now, there is one very famous, we have about 6 minutes left. So let me see if I can tell this story. I think I've already told this story, or I've written a blog about it and all. So there was this Acharya who was living in the place called Tirukoshtiur. Okay. He was called Tirukoshtiur Nambi. Now, Ramanuja was told to go and seek the rahasya, the meaning, the secret meanings of certain shlokas, certain important mantras from this guru. So he went. Now, when he went there, this Tirukoshtiur Nambi refused. He said, you go back and come again some other time. He refused to give him the knowledge that Ramanuja sought. Ramanuja went 18 times. 17 times, this Tirukoshtiur Nambi sent him back. He said, no, I'm not telling you today. No, you go back and come again. Okay. Like that, he sent him back 17 times. Each time, Ramanuja went back without feeling any kind of, animosity, or without feeling any feeling of injustice that, see, I have come from so far. He walked from Srirangam to Tirukoshtiur. That was a distance of about 150 miles. So you can imagine how far it is, how much time it takes to cover, right? Nowadays, with vehicles, we can go in few hours. But imagine walking all that distance, how long it would have taken. He went and he returned back. He went, he returned back. Once this Tirukoshtiur Nambi had come to worship Lord Ranganatha in Srirangam. So there, the Lord himself, through the Archaka, told Tirukoshtiur Nambi that it is not correct of you to test Ramanuja like this. He is paripurna in all aspects. He is somebody who has complete eligibility to receive the jnana from you. So you please give it to him. And yet, Tirukoshtiur Nambi tested him so much. Now, the 18th time when Ramanujar went there, finally Tirukoshtiur Nambi agreed. He was pleased with the sincerity of Ramanuja. He was pleased with the dedication of Ramanuja to learn, right? Despite being sent back 17 times. And finally, he imparted him with the meaning of the what is called as the sacred Tirumantra. Now, the minute he told him that, Ramanujar was so what you say, he was so filled with joy. He had got the mantra. And then immediately he thought, this is such a great thing this mantra is having the ability to liberate everybody from this samsara. Why should I keep this to myself? How can I keep it to myself? Now, Tirukoshtiur Nambi had clearly and very severely warned Ramanuja that see, this is a rahasya mantra. It is a secret mantra. You are not supposed to reveal this to anybody else. You have to find out if somebody is eligible. You have to test them, and only then, if they are completely eligible, then only you have to give them this mantra. Don't reveal it to anybody. And if you do that, you will go to hell, he had told. Now, Ramanuja, after getting the mantra, he realized the power of that mantra. And he said, this is such a powerful thing. How can I hold it to myself? Everybody in this samsara is suffering so much. So immediately, as soon as he got the mantra, Ramanujacharya climbed to the gopura of that temple and he called out to all the people who were there. He said, all of you who are interested, you want to achieve moksha, then come to me. I will teach you this mantra. And he willingly taught that mantra of Sharanagati to the Lord. Now, as soon as he did this, the news reached Tirukoshtiur Nambi. So he was very angry. He sent for Ramanuja, and when Ramanuja reached there, he said, what is this? It's a very big papa that you have done. It's a big crime that you have done. I'm sure you will go to Naraka now. You have gone against my words and revealed the secret mantra. So at the next moment, Ramanuja said, I know that, Guruji, Acharya, I know that. And I'm prepared. But just imagine, all those people who heard the mantra from me, they are going to get moksha. And if that is going to happen, then I, one soul, if I go to Naraka, I am willing to bear anything. I am willing to bear Naraka if it is going to get benefit to all of them. And hearing this answer, Tirukoshtiur Nambi was awestruck. He was like totally, he had never imagined such a bhava of, karuna from Ramanuja. And that is why we say that Ramanujacharya is the epitome of compassion and karuna on people. Now, till the time, always it is told that till the time of Ramanuja, before Ramanuja, whoever came, all the acharyas who came, they considered that if somebody has studied the Shastras, if somebody has performed sufficient amount of tapascharya, somebody has undergone sufficient amount of, deprivation and giving up desires in this life, then those kind of people who are, put through that fire of tapasya, only those people are eligible to get jnana. But ever since Ramanuja came, he changed the paradigm totally. What Ramanuja said is that anyone who has the desire to know about the Lord, anyone who has the desire to turn towards the Lord, he may have no other jnana, he may have not done any tapas, he may be totally lost in this world of sense pleasure, whatever it may be. If his only qualification that I seek is for somebody to have a desire to turn to the Lord, that desire to turn to the Lord is enough. That's the only qualification that is required for anyone to be granted this knowledge. And that was the great compassion of Ramanuja. So here we see a case of one Acharya who was bent on, testing the Shishya. And then we have the example of Swami Ramanuja himself, who was an Acharya who believed that the mere desire to learn is enough to grant that knowledge. So we are blessed that we have come in the times of Acharyas like Swami Ramanujacharya. We have access to their teachings. So we must make the maximum use of it. Find a guru. Now, many times it is not possible for us to go searching for a guru. So whatever is my sampradaya, whatever my family has been following, right? I should find who is the guru in that and follow the teachings of them. And more important than finding a guru is to seek to perform whatever activities are required so that I become eligible to be a shishya. The minute I get my eligibility as a shishya, then automatically the guru will appear in my life. So we've reached the end of our time. Let us offer Kritagnyata at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna and Guru, and let us pray for their blessings and grace always to be on us. Let them give us this ability to become good shishyas, and let them guide us in our sadhana marga. Thank you very much, and we will meet next Thursday, I think, also, and then